Hi, Nancy here, Soul Talk, and I have a dear friend who's been on before, Brian Flanagan. So, Brian, I'm not going to reintroduce everything about you. They can always look at all the rest, but you work with what field? Just give a brief
Uh,
rundown.
I'm a detective and been doing this 32 years in the police field.
Okay, and you take a lot of different courses that are not necessarily certifications for police work, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What are some of them?
Well, you're talking about beyond a formal education.
Mhm.
I got I went back for a master's degree, which had nothing to do with policing.
What was it
Um,
about?
just to, I went back for, it was like more public administration. It was within the criminal justice field, but, you always want to expand your knowledge base in everything. That's just how I feel.
So I'm going to read a little piece and then we'll talk. So this is the second edition, if everyone can see. It says Crime Victims' Rights by Richard Pompelio Esquire, a guide for practitioners in the state and federal courts of New Jersey. So his recommendations. And his first reference book went out to 700 judges in New Jersey, and he updated everything in this book. And I have to change to readers but it's just a brief little thing. And then I will ask you. So the use of psychics, it's page 118. The use of psychics in police investigations has been an increasing practice over the past half century, 50 years. Past half century. I have worked with nationally recognized psychic medium Nancy Olin Weber, in crime investigations and spiritual purpose, etc. And so he goes on about all that and names different cases, and before that he names the state trooper murder of Phil Monaco and etc. So if that's the case, how do you find them liking whether you are more versed in investigations intuitively also? Because you're very, if I may, I assume that they think you're very good at your work. Do they ever know that part of that is what they may call hunches? You may call it being more psychic, more intuitive. Tell me, tell
Yes.
us.
Well, the first police department I worked for, when I retired from, they saw all this stuff happening with me. It was a little different for me because I had a lot of things happening around me. Um, my phone would go off and music be playing out of the blue, and the music that's playing in the phone was exactly what was going on the call. Bizarre things. I don't really think bizarre anymore. It is what it is. But way too many things have happened with those coworkers for them to not believe that there was something going on back then. I got called in by the chief of police about some of this stuff. The current police department, because I retired and came back and doing it again, round two. Um, it's because the police department I'm at now comes from people from all different agencies. Kind of when they retire, come up to where I'm at. And so some believe and some, I don't say some believe and some don't believe. Some are more open about it than others.
So
I had a
when
weird experience recently with, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I want to hear you more than I want to ask you anything. Go ahead.
Oh, it's just really weird. I had a chief of police call me in. We had a death of a young male, and he
Mhm.
called me in afterwards to ask if I felt anything. I just thought that was really,
Interesting.
yeah, and to me, it was just wrong on a lot of levels. Um, I just to me, I don't know because sometimes I don't know where a person's coming from with why they're asking these questions. But for
Why?
me personally,
Wait, Brian, why would you question? where they're coming from. What has taught you that?
My intuition, my
Ah,
gut.
okay.
Some people are very true at what they say to you. My first police department, I retired from Coventry, Connecticut. I mean, these are some of the most honest people. I could tell them anything, and these are the people who I went through the gauntlet with. And when they said things to you or they talked to you, you knew it was from their heart. And I've now in a different place where some people are accepting and some aren't. I'm finding most are, but some aren't. Like one, for example, one guy asked me, what are your passions? My passion is the afterlife and everything about the afterlife. Well, then he said it's the devil. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to jump down this rabbit hole with you. But again, so that's why I just stay quiet with where I am, and those who are tight with me where I work understand, and those who aren't, I just don't really I don't really talk to them about it. Um,
Interesting. So I know you also take workshops in mediumship
yes,
because
yes.
of your interest. How do you apply it to your work?
Well, it teaches me. I think the first thing that sticks out in my head, it teaches me to trust my gut, trust my instinct. That's
Mediumship.
everything.
Do you
Well,
talk to the
mediumship
victim?
or even mediumship or even psych. I mean, it's different energy with both of them, a different vibrational energy, but even psychic hits, psychic hunches
Right.
versus mediumship. If I go into a situation at work, I feel like taking these mediumship psychic classes with people who are very respected in the field, yourself included, obviously. It's teaching me more about my awareness. It's teaching me more about how to stay grounded, but also how to trust your gut. It opens up the door for me, Nancy. The more knowledge you have to help me in my field, to help me bring closure to people, I mean, that's kind of what it's about. And so those people who are closed minded, they're not really gonna. It's sad, actually. It's just disheartening.
I understand. I when I first began, I worked with Ross English, who headed the detective bureau in a township. And what I found was he trusted, like you do, that implicitly. There was no argument. And because he was one of the chiefs in the bureau, it had a rippling effect on them where they wouldn't argue the point because he became county detective of the year the first year we worked together. And he had been working for quite a while. So the rippling effect of you, I'm leading to, because even when you say or stay quiet, when somebody says it's devils, whatever, that has a rippling effect. I think of it as, I call it the Johnny Appleseed effect. You're dropping seeds of
Yeah,
ideas and thoughts to others. Mediumship to me wasn't versus psychic. I think you need both in the
yeah,
same case that you're working because the psychics are the clairs, right? The clairvoyance, clairsentient, clairaudient, all of it. So those are the ones, at least what I have found, help me gather the evidence, if you will, the practical evidence, where they were, the environment, any evidence that's actual fingerprint, et cetera, et cetera. Because I had a case that was brought to me that we just fingerprint, and I had never worked with fingerprint. And I thought, oh, this should be a lot interesting. And so I built up a whole case on it, and I was right. And I was surprised, and we caught the person. But that's psychic stuff. But if the same thing happened in a murder case where that kind of evidence was part of it, that's the psychic part. The other part is the victim's going to teach us something. They're going to tell us more. They may expand on that, they may not be able to, but I believe that that afterlife, that part of them always needs to be kept in our hearts and prayers for them and to be their good friend, to keep them feeling they're much safer than they think because they were hurted. And so I think that's part of it. I don't see it as versus, I see it and, you know, psychic and mediumship. I think because for me, when I teach, it's one thing in discovering it that if you can do one, you can do the other. And you have. You've done both. So most people who think they're psychic but not medium, they ought to know, no, you're that. And most mediums who don't know that they're psychic, it's coming from the same soul, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I know you've also, how many black belts do you have? Excuse me.
Oh, I just finally, and then we know what that is. I finally got my black belt, but that to me is just like getting a bachelor's degree. It doesn't mean that I'm smarter than,
Right.
than a day before.
Better
It's
center.
just the, they, it, it's the beginning is really what they say. It's just the beginning of your learning.
Hmm.
So it took me 20 years to get to the beginning of my learning.
Well,
So,
you've been
but that's life.
busy. You've been busy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
So
have been.
I think that, one of the reasons I love having you on is because we need to hear a lot from the good guys and women, the good ones. And what sticks out, and we all know this, and sometimes when I worked years ago with psychiatrists, uh, patients, at the end of the day, uh, we look at each other and go, why would somebody chicken or egg? What came first? Why are they choosing this? I don't get it.
Well, what's I can't really comment too much about this case because I'm working it currently, but
Yeah.
there was a suicide that we had, and we found, the suicide notes, and most people, some of the guys I've talked to, some of the police officers, like most people would have found the notes and would have closed the case out, but it didn't sit right with me because there was something that wasn't right with this case. So I went through 55,000 text messages after the phone extraction, and I found a
Wait a minute.
rabbit hole.
55,000? I just have
Yeah, it
to.
was something like 55,000 text messages. I mean, because something didn't fit right in the case with me that I just couldn't sit with. Sure, I could have closed it out and been done with it. Well, I just went down a rabbit hole, and now a lot of things are coming out of this rabbit hole, um, just basically by following my gut. I could have ended it when I did,
Hmm.
but I didn't.
How
And
do we?
maybe,
How,
and I don't know why. And maybe it was just me, or I don't know if it was the victim pushing me to do it. I don't know. I just had the feeling to do this.
so
I don't
you
know.
can go. You can always go back in to that moment because everything is recorded inside, right? And you can
Yeah.
ask yourself, where is that coming from? It will tell you because you're well trained. You trained everything about you to do the work well. And what sticks out too much in our world, period, are those who do inappropriately and make any profession a terrible one to even think about for some people. And which is why I want you on, because you represent the majority of people who work in law enforcement. I've worked with probably about 50 to 100, some kind of number of law enforcement agents. Most of them I didn't get to know very well, but all of them were sincere, believed in hunches, care deeply about resolution rather than ego and being it. Most, I'd say 95% of them, you know, absolute majority.
Yeah.
And you are some of the best I've met in that because you're so dedicated to self-discovery. And I wish that anybody who knows any law enforcement agents who are not as open, let them hear Brian. There's nothing wrong with following, he keeps saying gut hunches, because that's good terminology to use for that kind of work. It doesn't matter whether what it really is, it's my soul connecting, it doesn't matter. So terminology, it's like calling me a psychic medium and animal and whatever else. Those are just labels. They're not who we are, right? So not
I,
labeling
I
your you're universal in my mind. You have this universal soul that knows how to jump in and do the work with such an open heart and caring that it's just, I love it. I love watching what you do and talking. So thank you.
I wish the older you, I think, look, the older I get, law enforcement, in my opinion, in where I'm at in Connecticut, is just it's a lot. It's all union based. I don't know
Hmm.
if that's the Northeast. But I only say that because
Mhm.
years ago I took a class with it was a basic seatbelt class early in my career, how to install car seats, a week long, and there was a retired New York City homicide detective in the class, and I'm like, what are you doing in this class? I mean, I could see him in Hartford PD doing homicides or any major city. He said, well, that's how, I never forget, he goes, that's how Connecticut is. Connecticut, when you get hired with your knowledge, you go right back and you work the road on a midnight shift because it's all union based. So it's hard to take somebody like the New York City police officer and you would want to expound on that. You would, unless he didn't want to do that or she doesn't want to do that, it's a place where, I don't know. So the older I get, the more I've let go of that ego. And that was more of a smack in the face many years ago, which taught me a lesson about that, which is kind of why I am where I am. But I think ego is fear driven. It's either love or it's fear. I think ego is fear driven. And who are we representing out here? We're not representing the victims. So, and they're,
I do know. I read a book by Gerald Jampolsky back in the 70s. Love is letting go of fear. It was a little book and sweet as can be, and so honestly right. And I'm listening to you go, self-discovery, because you've been doing self-discovery for a very long time. I'm going to ask a final thought question. Why did you ever go into policing at all?
so funny. I literally just reading. I'm still going through my book. Why did I go into policing? My mentor in high school, I had no interest in policing. My father retired from the military. My mentor in high school was my accounting teacher, and after I went to college, I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And through a series of synchronistic events, got hired on Halloween. Weird. I went to college and I ended up switching my major 3.5 years into. I thought my parents wanted to kill me. One of my first CPR death investigation calls, if not the first CPR call I had, was my accounting mentor, who I found
Oh,
in a car. Yes. And if that's not synchronistic, sometimes I look back and I say, did I meet him to be an accountant? I don't think so. Or did I meet him to be with him maybe when he crossed over? Because I had to pull him out of the car I was with a bunch of people, trying to save his life. And unfortunately, he passed. And those are like little breadcrumbs along the way. So to answer your question, I never want to be a police officer, but sometimes I feel like I think I'm controlling things that I'm not controlling, and spirit's controlling everything. Your path. So I don't know.
wonderful ending.
I
I
don't know.
love it. That's you.
So
I feel the same way. You get called and you're not
yeah,
in charge yet. Whatever that is going, yeah, take that zigzag and go.
yeah, yeah.
Because I,
But when you
yeah,
go through that back then, it's very hard to go through that.
oh
You
yeah,
don't. You're lost in life. You're young, coming out of college. You don't know where you're gonna go. But then all of a sudden, you look back and you're like, that's kind of one of those aha moments of why things ended up the way they did. So
wow. So do you ever
yeah,
try and reach your accountant mentor?
no, no,
Okay, so I'm giving you homework from our workshop that you're in. And this is part of your homework. I want you to
yeah,
just reach out and love him. That's all. And see
I
what
will.
happens.
I will.
I know you will. So that's Brian Flanagan, folks, and that's why he's here. And he was kind enough because the Wi-Fi didn't work somewhere else. He drove somewhere where he can talk. That's Brian, all the way. Thank you so much. Uh, you
Oh,
have a
thanks for having
wonderful
me.
day. And I'll see you
You
next
too.
week. Take good care,
Perfect.
honey. Bye.
All right.